Bat family, welcome back for another Kickstarter preview. We have been graciously invited to be part of the coverage for Realm of Reckoning from IV Games. Scott, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. Jason, how you doing?
Fantastic.
So, I am Mark, and we are here to walk through Realm of Reckoning. So, like we said, Realm of Reckoning, we were sent a pre-production copy, and everything that we are going to talk about in this is subject to change because we have a rule set that is being refined as we go through this. There are some production things that we have already been told are going to be adjusted. So we are going to be talking about our experience based on the prototype as it stands.
Yes.
Realm of Reckoning is a 3 to 5 player game that is a mixture of drafting, resource management, and bidding. There's a few other mechanisms in play. There's a little bit of set collection. There's a little bit of
area control. Yeah.
But there's a lot going on in this one. I would venture to say this is IV's heaviest game so far.
I would completely agree.
Yeah.
So in Realm of Reckoning, you are going to play 3 ages, and you are going to have a draft hand of 5 cards for each of the 3 ages. Depending on the player count, you are going to set up the deck to make sure that you get to those 5 cards per person. And those cards are going to be broken into either action cards, which are going to give you some kind of resource, and then are going to be tucked under your dual layer player board. So that way you can either do a little bit of the set collection, move up on one of the 5 tracks, or potentially both. Or you're going to play a Reckoning card. And Reckonings are the major focus of the game. They're going to happen 9 times across the course, regardless of player count, because to get to that 5 cards per player, you are going to build a deck per age in setup that is 2 cards short, and you are going to shuffle in 2 random realms that will be reckoned, and they could be the same each time because there are 3 decks that you're going to shuffle out of and then into what you've made. So it is very possible that you are going to be reckoning in the Stone Gardens potentially 6 times.
Yeah.
Alternately, it can never reckon. You just don't know until you go through the course of the game. The reckoning itself is by far the most complicated thing to teach, and that is because it turns into a series of blind bids. Once you have drafted your card and you simultaneously reveal, you go in turn order, which means it is very possible that other players will get resources, and then the player that played the reckoning card will trigger the reckoning, and then potentially somebody will get more stuff, and then you go into another one. So when you go into a reckoning, when you're choosing to do one, it is important to see who is doing it, where am I at in the player order, and what are people going to get before this triggers? Because the reckoning is very straightforward of who is going to spend the most to win the rewards. And there is a separate deck of reward cards, again, based on player count. So everybody will always get something. Those could be placing a monument, which is going to alter the endgame scoring. It could be resources, it could be points, it could be some kind of penalty. And there are moments where you are okay to just take the penalty because it means you don't actually have to pay your bid. When you are bidding in the Reckoning, there are claim tokens that are a certain color that are going to move around the board, and based on what claim tokens are in your realm during the Reckoning, that tells you what color of resources you can actually use to bid with.
Which is wild because that constantly can be changing.
We had multiple times where the color of a region was not present to be used in all of our games. And we have played this a not insignificant amount.
No.
So when you're looking at your resources to bid with, you have acolytes, which are just dudes that you place on the board, and they are going to be at a 1-to-1 rate. Again, these conversions might change. We are playing on the prototype rules, but as it stands, then you have coins that are going to be used on a triangular scale to bid. So if you want to add 1 coin for a vote, that's fine. If you want to add 2 points into your bid with coins, you have to pay 3 total, and scaling from there. Those are essentially regardless of what color claim tokens are there. You can always use your guides, you can always use your coins. There are 3 other resources to be used. The first being mercenary cards. Those are going to have a couple colors on them. If your color matches the claim tokens that are there, that gets you points. You have wardens, which if you have, again, the matching color, they are either worth 1 vote and they're just permanent, they sit there, or you can spend them for 3 total votes, but then you've lost them. And wardens aren't infrequent to come by, but you need to be really careful when you're spending them for 3. Mm-hmm. And then you have your influence track itself. And the influence track is the most interesting thing to use as a resource, because if you're at a certain point on it and you're in the lead, you are actually going to get a special power that if anybody ties you or exceeds you, you can lose. So you have to be really careful to spend your influence points because you might be giving up special powers.
Yeah.
So once everybody has finalized their bid, we are going to simultaneously reveal, and depending on which reckoning we're in, either one that was played from a draft, that person will just put the card underneath their board, or if it is a final reckoning that happens at the end of each age, whoever wins will take that card. Those cards are going to have wild symbols on them, which are going to contribute to the various set collection goals that may or may not be in the game.
Which is very nice because those are the only other cards that don't give you any other type of reward. So the fact that those symbols are wild is great because you're kind of getting, I mean, in the games that we played, typically those reckonings were the last card that was held. And so whoever had it didn't have a choice. Yeah. And they kind of got miffed on the actually getting coins or getting guys or getting influence.
So once you have settled out the winners and losers of the reckoning, you will pay your resources unless you are the person taking the penalty, because the penalties are going to be lose points, lose guys, lose mercenaries, whatever. And you can just choose to take that reward. Even if you win the reckoning, you can choose to take the losing penalty, so that way you don't have to pay your bid. If you can't pay the penalty, you have to start paying in points. You can go negative on points. We never saw that happen. We never saw it come even close to happening.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you are either going to pick some kind of resources, could be wardens, mercenaries, whatever, or you're going to pick a monument. The monuments are really what make this game stand out the way it does, because there are so many different monument spots, and I'm not going to cover them all here, but essentially out of the like 15, 18 spots on the board, only 9 of them are going to be in play. And those 9 are the scoring conditions, which means that the monuments that get placed in age 1 are going to score 3 times. The ones in age 3 are only going to score once. So it's figuring out situationally, when is it best to turn these on? Should I avoid trying to place one in a certain spot because maybe one of my opponents has a lot of something? Maybe I can just short them immediately and just start nailing them with negative points. There's a lot of various ways to go down this route. But that's really the gist of the game, is you are going to draft, pick an action card or pick a reckoning card, finish out the hand, have a final reckoning, do that 3 times, highest score wins. The scores at the end of each round will very much increase over the course of the game. You can feel okay at the end of round 1. At the end of round 3, you can watch massive point swings come through.
Oh, yeah.
So that is how Realm of Reckoning plays. Again, this is not 100% of the rules, but again, we're also using the prototype rules, so we want to make sure that we really underline that so you don't try and learn to play the game off of this, because by the time you hear this, the rules might have changed.
Well, and also we want them to go look at the Kickstarter and do the research and really pay attention to all that information that Ivy's going to give us.
So with that in mind, let's go ahead and move into our next regular segment. We do stuff like this, and that is the learning curve. I, per normal, learned it and taught it to you guys. How did it feel to learn the game?
I think it felt pretty easy to learn. There's a lot of symbology in here that is very easy to read. I think that with the action cards, it's very simple to go ahead and say, all right, this is your action, do this, then go ahead and either get this influence or have this symbol on the bottom. The only thing that took a little bit longer to learn was the reckoning, and in all honesty, those were pretty simple as it was too. Really, the only thing that I think took a second for me to figure out, and this is just a personal thing, was the triangular coin system to go ahead and vote with. I was constantly looking over at over at our buddy Scott and being like, "Hey, can you do the math for me real quick?
Could you do that math real quick?" Like,
how many votes do I get for this?
How many votes you want, friend? You need 6. If you want 3, you got 6.
Yeah. That might be the only thing that I could see, is that for someone who might not be good at math for that portion, maybe go and have a little tick mark on the side to be like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vote type of thing,
Right.
for example. But in the teach, very easy to learn, nice step-by-step instructions, and in all fairness, it was maybe the reckonings took a little bit longer. That was it.
Yeah, I think with normal gameplay, when you're sitting there and you're actually playing the game, it was relatively simple. And like even the scoring of the ages, there are so many score types that we have seen in other games. So if you are a board game person, there's enough. They're like, oh, I've played this type of, this is a thing I've played in this game. Okay, cool. So they've got that's this feature here, and so on and so forth. And you see that, when you're looking at those, where you're going to place those monuments, you're like, okay, I know how this works. But yeah, I think it was very easy to learn and then immediately implement. How was it for you learning the rules to teach us?
It was actually pretty good. Again, we're
working with a prototype, yeah.
in progress
Yeah,
things. So I definitely had to reach out to Austin for some clarifications and a few things. But the actual structure of the rules, what we were asking was a lot of like little edge case things or whatever. Learning the game was very easy, and teaching the game was very simple.
It felt like this was almost one of your easiest teaches for us.
It was really easy. And the fact that I was able to just off the cuff do everything I just did in the earlier segment, it speaks to how straightforward of a game, despite its complexity, despite its weight, it does feel very easy to teach, because it is. We're going to do a draft. This is what the majority of your actions are going to be. This is what the other thing is. This is where it's complex. Move on.
And you know what? I think that's very nice, because since this is such a heavyweight game, thankfully, it is an easy learn. It is an easy teach, because if those were also hard to do, I don't think we would enjoy it as much.
I do also have to give kudos to Austin and the guys over at IV, because when we were doing our playtesting, when we had those questions, they were so quick to respond.
Austin was on top of it, man.
Yeah. Like instantly, as soon as you sent a message back, like, hey, what about this? I heard the go, oh, here it is.
It was very nice. I mean, because I know that Mark had stated that he was saying, hey, we're going to play about this time. If we have any questions, are you available? And so, yeah, big shout out to them to be able to give us that information right away so that we are as knowledgeable as we are on this.
Because I think this, of all the previews we've done for them, is the one that needed the most clarification and had the most changes from even when it's printed, because I had to change some of the stuff on the board, and there were some things that
there's stickers on the board because stuff had already changed.
Yep. So easy to teach. I think this is, especially if you are playing with people that like to play this weighted game, this is going to be very, very quick, very smooth.
Yeah.
And I haven't been around for some of the other testing that you've done for Ivy. For this one, in comparison to the other studio versions, there's so much of kind of like a gumbo of different ideas plucked from different games that come together in this one. Is that why you think the complexity is a little bit more or less, or is that kind of unique for this game?
Yes.
I think Mark said it right. It's a yes, because there is so many things that make it really, really challenging. But then it is super nice that because there are so many other things that we can sit there and look up.
What I have routinely said about Ivy is that they are mad scientists. Zach and Max and Austin, as a design team, just pull this weird, crazy, like, hey, we're going to take these two incredibly disparate mechanisms, shove them together, throw a couple of other sprinkles on top, and make magic out of it. They're mad scientists.
Yeah. That is wild. That's still a wild game.
Veiled Fate.
Oh, yeah. Scales of Fate.
Veiled was awesome.
Scales. My goodness.
So, yes, I think there's a lot of truth to what you said, in the sense of there's so much that is recognizable if you are already a gamer, that you can say, oh, this is where the magic is happening. This is why this fuse is here. And it's all understandable in a way that some of these other more complex games that we play do take that extra layer of, okay, stop, I need to do this, whatever.
If I'm on an island myself, I can be on an island myself. I feel that you or Jason or we could take this game to people who don't play these type of games and remove ourselves just to be there as teachers and be able to teach this game to other people, and they would be able to learn from this game how to play other games and still have an okay time with this one. It is a very heavyweight game. So like we would have to preface that for these people going, this is going to be a hard game. This is not an easy game, but you are going to learn so many things that you are going to be able to take that knowledge and go do well with other games.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm not on my own island.
I mean, this game very much speaks to the Golgarian me of, I only need one card and one life to win, right?
That's true.
And the knife edge balance of what all do I need to survive to the next reckoning?
Yeah.
Delicious tension there. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but when it comes to that, I agree. let's go into our most subjective area, and this is the art, iconography, and components.
Yes.
I want to just preface, again, these are not necessarily final. There are some art things with the board especially that they have already told us that they are going to be addressing, so we're not going to be covering any of that because prototype components.
Yeah, it's prototype and they're gonna fix it.
But the big chunky wooden pieces, great. Symbology is great, and I think that's why it is so easy to teach and learn. Is the iconography, despite there being just what appears to be a spew of it on the board, is very clear. It's very well associated. It is very easy to understand on the cards versus player board versus the main board.
Yep.
It's all integrated very well.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. It's amazing when we played the 4-player game and there was just so much on the board and it really looked like color soup, but it still kind of works, and it's amazing that it works.
Yeah, I think with a lot of the striking neon gothic style that they went for in this one, there is a lot to be said about the color choices for the cyan, the pink, the yellow, the orange. Those things are really good and really striking on and off the board to go ahead and give you this vast difference of, okay, we focus here, we know what our characters are. There are a couple other colors that may be a little bit muted, but in all fairness, once you go ahead and have a 5-color game, you have to go ahead and kind of make some choices. And I think at least for one of the games that we did, we made sure that we let everybody know when we had those kind of visibility problems across the board.
Yeah.
We were nice enough to go and be like, all right, this is what we're doing because maybe that symbol, I couldn't quite see what it was.
And what was really nice was that we had our buddy Clarky play, and as we've talked about on the channel before, is that Clarky does have color blindness issues. He actually was fine. We were able to go, he was able to go, oh, this color goes with, this thing goes with this color, this thing goes with this color. He didn't say the right colors, but he was able to go, I can at least
because
pair
the
everything
symbology
up.
was so strong, he didn't have any issues with this one.
And the colors were close enough that he could match all of his colors up.
Despite the fact there are 2 blues and a red orangey thing and a pink, there were still no issues with that.
Which is great.
This is one of the, like I said, the iconography is so strong and the coding for the pieces is so well done that it was really nice to have him come out of a game like this and be like, no issues at all.
Yeah, that was great. I was worried about him. I think we all had the conversation when we were playing the 3-player.
Well, that's why we wanted to have him for the 4-player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was quintessential to go ahead and have him for that one, and I was really happy to go ahead and hear that he had next to no issue with it. And the cool part was he even played one of the character archetypes that I thought had a little bit more muted of a color. We had one that's kind of like a tannish, khaki-ish, kind of muddy brown color, and then I was playing one that had a lot of grays to it. So I thought maybe he might have a little bit of an issue between the two, but he was able to go ahead and differentiate without a problem.
I think we're, generally speaking, iconography, all that is, we're very strong.
Yes, it's nice.
Components, I think there are a couple of things that, because we'll get into art, because this is the one that we are all the most divided on.
Yep.
But when we're looking at components, I think the biggest knock against this game,
it's big.
It takes a lot of table space. Yeah. And we've talked about it on the pod before, I have a very long table. I don't know how we would reasonably fit a 5th person in and have them be even remotely close to the board.
I mean, unless we all shifted to that end, but then would we still have enough room to be comfortable if we're all crammed down on that end?
I think a big part of it too is the player boards. Since you have such a big player board and you're using the top to bottom to essentially tuck your cards in, you have to go ahead and have your cards in the stacks to show that, all right, these are all of the things that I've played so far. When you have that on the top and the bottom, you're taking up a lot of table space by having that, especially with up to 5 people.
Yeah.
And they are, for the people that want to know this, intended for sleeved cards.
Yep.
We did not sleeve them, but that's another size concern.
I mean, that adds a couple millimeters on the edge of every single card.
Yeah.
I think overall it would work much better with the sleeve cards. I would agree on that. And in all fairness, the player boards themselves are absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, they're banger.
Oh,
yeah,
I love them. I love them. I mean, yes, we've said that they're a little too big, but my goodness, they're really nice.
Each one of the different factions have their own art style to it. They're all personalized for that faction. They have their different striking colors on them, all of the different iconography, and it has such a cool way to show just all of your starting assets that I think that part of me just looking at it to begin with was just looking like, oh man, these are so cool. I want to go ahead and pick out the coolest looking player board and then play those. They just look gorgeous.
I think the colors they chose after the first game, we were a little like, after repeated plays, I really came to like these colors and these player boards a lot. I mean, I always play purple, which are the Veil Wardens. They're very cool. The Archivists just look super sick. I love this hot pink on them.
It's my favorite.
The yellow, I was playing the Gilded, and so I was much stronger in yellow than you guys were to start with, and I got to monopolize it on it for a little bit. I didn't keep up with it, but I think it's really neat.
I could easily see them popping out in expansions that would are like leaders or just even more
cool.
stuff.
Yeah. So we like the iconography, we like the components. Where do we want to start on the art? How about Scott, since you're middle ground?
I don't totally hate the font. The font is a little rough for me. I can read it fine. I'm right in that nice little middle ground. I wish there was a little bit more. I think there's a lot of empty space that could have been filled with something very, very interesting. I think that how currently everything has positioned on the board, like there's some really nice art, but it's muted, so it's hard to see. So I'm hoping that with the new production that you can actually see this fantastic artwork, because it is really, really cool. So I'm right in that nice middle ground, because it's like, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. I wish it was a little bit more substantial, so it really sings with a theme that they're trying to give us. It just needs more.
I'm going to come in as the negative on this.
Right.
There are some really neat moments of art. The Colossal's March, where you see the head in the one spot and then way over on the other side of the region, like his hand popping out. Really neat. But because the theme feels lost to me, this has a very aggressive art style where it is extremely stylized. It is going for what it's doing, but it fits into... You were really spot on when you described it as Mork Borg similar. And we don't inherently like comparing a lot of things in Kickstarter previews like this, but if you like that art style, if you like that strong, edged look of a lot of black and a lot of high contrast, the problem is I don't like that. And so I was pulled out of it more because I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't think it's bad by any means. It's well done. It builds what it's trying to do. It just doesn't grab me at all.
It's not aesthetically pleasing to you.
Yeah.
And you're higher than I am, correct, Jason?
Yeah, I think with this type of art, I am a fan of this. It does have a very strong presence, especially with the different color splashes on a very dark background. I do like how it highlights a lot of the cool things that you can see, not only on the player boards, which, again, amazing, but they have some of the important aspects on the board itself. There are a couple things that go ahead and get drawn back, I think, by it. The font choice, at least on the board. A couple of the areas, they have like billowing...
The realm names themselves.
Yes. And they're like either a billowing like curtain or a pennant, stuff like that. And when you get to that kind of ruffled billowing area, I can see where they wanted to have a 3D kind of effect for it. But I think that the font gets lost in it a little bit.
After the amount of time we have spent with this game, I am still reading that as the Keeping Cliffs and the Fermented Forest. I just am.
And it's fragmented.
Yep.
And the Weeping Cliffs.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is the kind of billowing effect, because if you look at like Stone Gardens, for example, is a flat sign, and you can read that one pretty easily, but the ones that have that kind of wavy 3D effect is a little bit lost there. The one thing that I will put out is I love a lot of the art pieces that they've done for each of the regions. Like Mark mentioned, the Colossus that's in the marsh is awesome. They have a couple things for the Fragmented Forest, and then over in the southeastern side, they have this really cool, almost kind of a keep. I really like the artwork there. The only thing that it kind of dropped for me was I would look at the board and have everything set up on the board and didn't really get to see a lot of the artwork, because unless it has the bright splashes like the cyan and some of the yellow, a lot of that artwork was kind of hidden under things, almost like Easter eggs, until we cleared the board off. And it wasn't until we got done with the first game that I looked down and I'm like, oh man, this Colossus is super cool. Oh, look at this waterfall over here. Like, there's so many really neat pieces of art on there for people that like this art style like I do, that it is a little bit lost because of how muted some of those colors are.
And then you stack all the components on top of it.
Right, and then you just can't see it. I know that we had a little bit of a differing opinion when it comes to the bidding dials that we have on here. They are really cool. They look like these masks that you actually have the numbers in the background. The masks themselves are really cool. They look kind of like rock, crystalline type of things. And what they had it under on the backside was the numbers would show through the eye holes. And I really like the idea of the masks. Maybe open the eye holes a little bit. It would be a little bit easier to read those.
I definitely want the eye holes bigger because I was never able to read your bids across the table. Not that it inherently matters because I trust you, but at the same time, it would just be nice to know, like, oh, that's 13, not 8. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
But I will say they are extremely good components. They turn really smoothly. There's no anything of worrying, are they going to break? Are they going to wear out? Like, they felt really nice to use. They are very easy to read if they are directly in front of you, but as soon as you leave that immediate range, they were tough to use.
Yep.
Again, those could change. Now we're getting into kind of the suggestions, how we feel about it, what other people might like. So let's start here. Normally we would have this broken out, but I really feel like these two things in this game are linked. We want to talk replayability and player count. So I love the game at 3 players.
Yep.
I think it's very good and really enjoy it. We'll play it. 4 players.
It was a little more frustrating.
It was surprising how much you could get lost, especially, and I'll bring this up in a later section, but there's information holes that you have in a 4-player you don't have in a 3.
Right. And it might have been done on purpose that way.
Absolutely. But I will say I actively do not want to play this at 5. We have played it at 3, we have played it at 4, we have enjoyed it, but I do not want to play this at 5. I really feel like this is a 3-player game.
Yeah.
At 4 and 5, I would almost say it's imperative for the people to be very outspoken and make sure that they are designating, okay, I am first player. We know the rotation of what you're supposed to be. After a reckoning is played, then everybody should take a moment to go ahead and readjust themselves to go and make sure, okay, whose turn is next.
You almost need like a little flag. Cool. I'm the first player. Boop, 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 boop.
Like an active player token.
Like an active player token that you just pass.
I normally really can't stand those in games. I actually think this would be a great idea for this because when a reckoning happens at the start or at the end of a draft round, it's
There's
really
no problem.
easy.
Yeah.
But man, when it happens in the middle, you can get lost in those higher player counts.
Well, the majority of our games, our reckonings were in the middle. There was only one time that they happened at the end. They never happened at the beginning.
It can get very wild for those reckonings,
Yes.
though, because of how either random or not so random they can be in that age. You could potentially go ahead and have somebody throw out a reckoning first round, or you could have them on the inverse, have the last 2 people to play in the age play reckonings and then have the final reckoning back to back to back, which is insane.
Which we did that very first
we
age.
had that in one game. I've said my piece on the player count. What do you guys feel?
I completely agree. I think it felt really great. Got done playing after 3. It was like, that's a very good game. I like it. I enjoy it. At 4, I was like, I'm a little more, I liked it, but I was still had those spots where I was a little frustrated.
Sure.
It sings at 3 very, very well. And at 4, I would say the thing that turned me off a little bit was not quite that I got muddled. I think the 2 big things for me was how many acolytes would be on the table at once was a little bit jarring and a little bit difficult when you have so many in, say, one area that it's hard to kind of see what's going on in the rest of that space, especially sitting down. So standing up was a little bit important for me. But the other part, I think we'll talk about a little bit later, is the visibility for like your reckonings when it comes through.
So we're looking at replayability. I am torn here because this is a game that I really feel like you want to play with the same group and build a knowledge meta with, because there is so much going on that once you understand how to read the board state and the importance of that arc of the monuments of, do I care about them now? Maybe I care about them later. How am I going to define these? This is not a game that I want to sit down and play immediately a second time. We did on one evening where we played multiple player counts, but this is one that I am going to look at and say, like, okay, we're going to have this be a feature game of the evening, and then we'll play it again next week, next month, whatever. I think there's some replayability here, but I also think this is one that you want the same group of people to be playing because you're going to build up that meta, you're going to build up that knowledge, and it's going to be more interesting in that way.
There is a feeling kind of an abstract 4D chess almost, where it is a good idea to go ahead and have the same group. Because if you own the game, then you can go ahead and build up a decent meta for each one of the guilds, or whatever you want to call them. And if you do that, it's definitely going to give you an unfair advantage towards some of the new players that you're going to have, because you clearly have a strategy that you can follow for each one. So I think the cool part is having the same 3 or 4 people that you want to, they will know, okay, you really soared on that last strategy, so I'm going to go ahead and try to counter that, or to maybe adopt it into my own. And it makes this really cool aspect, as I try to go ahead and put it into like chess terms before, of evolving your own game, but it kind of limits you to how many people can go ahead and play in that kind of bubble.
Yeah, we played it a couple nights in a row, and I'm good for a while. It was heavy enough that I got what I wanted out of it, and I'm looking forward to playing it again, but I don't need to do it with any immediacy.
Yeah. This wasn't Scales of Fate where like, run it again.
Right.
But I do think that it does say something to the effect that even though this is a longer game, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of consideration. My brain was still up and running, so we still kept playing games afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So this is not one that's going to be like, whew, my brain is fried.
Yeah.
But you're definitely coming out with a strong, solid game.
Oh, yeah.
Let's move into what do you think people would like about this game?
For me, it's just the variability. Because depending on where you put those monuments, the game changes. We had some spots where we played them before. Like, we're like, oh, we're going to score these points again this way. We actually did it earlier, with a couple of them. And then we had a couple ones that we had not used before. And yeah, it radically changed the game. I dig that you could sit there and be like, oh, hey, this is what I'm strong at. This is what I'm going to try to work on. Boy, I hope I win one of these reckonings, because that's where I'm going to put a monument. And then the rest is all adaptation. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you have to adapt as fast as you can.
Yeah, this does feel like a game that is going to reward more immediate tactical play than long-term strategy, because there is so much that changes from moment to moment, especially the way those reckoning rewards come out, that you are really looking at it of what is my best play for right now and what can I set up in the short term. But while you're building towards the scoring of the monuments over the course of the game, it really does feel like I need to respond to what's happening at the table. And based on the cards that I'm drafting, I know what I can plan for and maybe hope to see come back on the 4th and 5th card.
I think it is pretty huge to go ahead and see, at least in the early on aspect of where the monuments are getting placed, because it does shape the game in the long run. So especially first age or first half of second age, it's going to go ahead and dictate a little bit of the meta of the game, which is really cool. I also absolutely love the artifacts that you get to use throughout the game that we got to go ahead and touch upon when we were talking about how to play. Now, the artifacts are, once you get a high enough influence, which is over 3, and then you are the leader of the influence track for each one of the different areas, you get these powers. And each one of these artifacts has a cool power that is essentially, when you are doing this action, get more stuff. Or at the beginning of a reckoning, then you get to also get one of these things. And I think that those are extremely powerful. That gets to go ahead and kind of build your engine a bit. But also there is a little bit of that take that, depending upon what people play each round. Because we saw a lot of these artifacts shifting a lot of hands throughout the game.
Well, and that touches on something that I think can be very interesting, is that you can choose whether or not you want to be involved in the reckoning. I think there's a really interesting choice of, do I care about this particular reckoning? Do I care about the rewards that the person who triggered it has picked? Mm-hmm. And how hard do I need to play for them? Because sometimes those rewards are, get essentially a full hand of mercenary cards. Other times it can be 3 points. And yes, they get better as the ages go on. So you're going to be fighting harder later in the game. But I do like that push and pull of how much do I care at any given moment, and how is my choice going to affect what's going to happen on the board based on what other people think I am reacting to the board with. Mm-hmm. You can play a lot of mind games with this game.
Or one of the reckonings that we were doing, I had beaten Clarky for both of them. And I said, no, I don't want it. You can have it. I'll take the point loss. Mm-hmm. And he went, but I didn't want to. And I'm like, I know, you have to use your resources. And he just looked at me like, dang it.
Yeah.
And a lot of those resources are instrumental in building up for, say, the next reckoning. is if you, for example, have a cascade of reckonings, then you have to go to make sure that you are bidding in the right amount of votes and the right amount of resources for the important reckonings that you are going for. We had a couple that were back to back that, for example, in one of mine, I knew that the first one I wasn't going to do as well on, so I'm not going to spend as much. But the second one I went all in on because I wanted to make sure that I cemented the monument that I wanted to put in.
Yeah, and there was a situation where we had one of those back-to-backs. I'm like, I'm going to go all in on the first one because I got to pick what the rewards were, and I knew I could go for 7 mercenary cards, which turned into 14 points in the game for me. And I just knew I wasn't basically going to be involved in the second one. So it was setting up of, okay, I can lose 2 guys off the board. I don't really care. So it's a really interesting balance. I don't particularly love when the game does the same area back to back, but it does lead to interesting positional things in the course of the game.
Oh, yeah, because we all were kind of going, oh, this is happening. Ah, nuts. Okay, well, let's see how this goes.
And I will go ahead and point to the fact that when we go back to player counts, when it is at 3 players, when we were able to see the reckonings go through the draft process, the majority of the times we were able to, all 3 of us, see essentially what reckonings were in the draft and then what was going to be final reckoning. So for the most part, we were all able to kind of play our age to make sure that we had some type of politics in that reckoning. Where when we were in player 4, player 5s, you are much less likely to go ahead and see what those reckonings are, especially when it came to, say, if Scott had it and we're going down and around, that's going to go ahead and be a big detriment for some folks. If 3 of us get to go ahead and see the reckonings and then it gets played right off the bat, there's somebody that will be essentially out of the loop on what we get for that. And they're going to be at an information loss, which is, albeit how you can play the game, but also it is a little bit of an unfair advantage.
Well, and I think that's a good pivot point into what do we think people are going to not like or need to be aware of in the game. And that is one of my number one biggest things in the game, is that in a 3-player game, the chances of you not seeing a reckoning, at least one of them, means that both of them are being played in the first round. In a 4-player or a 5-player game, there is a very realistic chance that both of the reckonings are going to come off before you even get to see them in your hand. And that's a real bummer because it is a big information gap.
Well, I think that's also part of the strategy, because if I'm looking at my hand and I see that I have the reckoning in pink, that I'm going to sit there and be like, okay, well, how much power do I have in pink? Who has majority in pink? Oh, you know what? I'm going to drop this now because no one can set up for it, and I maybe don't have the highest advantage, but I'm putting everybody on their heels because all of a sudden they're like, oh, first thing out the gate, we have to do a reckoning, especially if I'm the first player and I have the reckoning in my hand. I think I'd be more apt to do it, even if it was a 3-player game.
Especially if you have a decent amount of setup in that land as well.
Yeah.
I just think it leads to a first-player advantage.
The inverse of it is exactly that. Yeah. Say for a 5-player game, the first player, if they, for example, have both reckonings in their hand at the bat, they have anywhere from 1 to 4 more turns to be able to prep for all 3 of the reckonings, and some of the other people will have much less.
Yeah, I don't love that. And I think one of the things that I really struggle in this game with, and it comes down to essentially what was discussed, of there's a lot of tactics, there is strategy that needs to go on, there is skill that is happening. There is, in my opinion, a shocking amount of luck in this game.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had some ages where like, oh, I don't want to give up any of these cards. And then there were others where it's like, great, another, like, you handed me crap. And I mean, that's drafting games. There's very few that are always like, oh, I don't want to hand this handful of knives over to my opponent. So when you have a situation where you have both reckonings, yeah, you're down 2 of the cards in your hand, but that information control is so important, especially in a game where even with only 5 regions on the board, if I am sitting here building for yellow for the Stone Gardens and a Stone Garden reckoning never happens, boy, that's a kick in the pants.
Which did happen for that last game.
Yeah, it is an interesting idea, and we set it up multiple times of, oh, hey, the Weeping Cliffs, the blue clay markers aren't there, so you can't actually use its own color in that place. And that is going to be something that some players are going to really go sandpaper against, because, but I'm in that area, I should be able to use those resources.
Right.
If the claim token's not there, you can't use it. if other people are watching, you can be really vicious in this of you are incredibly strong in red in the Dominion. So I'm going to make sure that red isn't there. Like I know in the final reckoning, we're going to this place. So I'm going to make sure that red isn't there so you can't really actively participate. You can be really, really mean in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad that at least in our bubble, we didn't really have that where we were kind of cutthroat in the game. There were two separate occasions where one player kind of got a flat tire for, say, maybe 2 or 3 rounds, and that really was a detriment for the rest of the game.
I do feel like the game can have that rich get richer, poor get poorer feeling. Mm-hmm. I have been on both ends of it across the course of our games. And when you're ahead, it's a little because as long as I maintain status quo, I'm probably going to win. And when you're behind, it just feels like, okay, what cards are in my hand? Is there a way for me to come back? Darn it, we're going to do the same reckoning place twice. Like there's the arc that the game puts you on feels bumpy to me.
I think it also goes back to the whole idea of having to be willing to pivot and doing that. Because, like, when in that one game, you put one of the monuments in a section where it was area majority. And I know that that is where I fail so horribly. And when I saw that that was what was going to be, I decided to play as hard as I could to make sure that that was the thing that I was going to win on.
But in that position, the only reason it worked out for you is when the reckoning triggered, the person who triggered it, because it wasn't you, picked the reward card that gave you a ton of guys to be able to sweep in. And so that's where that tactical pivoting shows up. But that's also, it was luck that not only was the card there, but the one that you wanted was the one that was picked.
Right.
So that's what I mean. There's some interesting situations response to occur, but if you don't like that idea of I am not in perfect control of what I'm doing or what I can see what's coming, again, that can just be a sandpaper thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
yep. There's monumental changes right at the beginning of the Reckoning where if you're picking the end of Reckoning rewards, right afterwards you're picking where the pillars are going to be distributed. If you're going to bring one color of another type into the same land, that could go ahead and vastly change the entire economy of what's going to happen with a vote. And it's either going to go ahead and be a wow, okay, this is my Reckoning, so I can go ahead and choose what color's coming over here to maximize what I can get. But in another instance, Clarky, for example, went ahead and brought another color in that I had no idea he was going to choose it.
Yep.
But it ended up being a big boon for me because I could go ahead and drop another 6 or 7 points to my vote because he dropped in one of my prominent colors.
I think there is a lot to like here. I think there is a lot that people can really dig into. There are a few games that I'll recommend here in a moment if you like this game or if you like those, why you might like this one. But there's a lot that you can really rough up against. If you don't like luck, if you don't like a variable degree of meanness, because you can actively go after each other.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's, I think it's just something to be aware
conscious.
of.
Yeah. You need to be
that's
conscious.
That's the only reason I bring it up.
Yeah. No.
I picked out a card during draft to be able to go ahead and play because it was going to later give me some points when I put down a monument. And in turn, that also gave me just enough influence that I accidentally took one of the artifacts that you were right about to use. And if you're playing a game where you're trying to be, mainly like friendly, trying to go ahead and try to have not a dagger in the back type of thing, that kind of feels sour for the person doing it and definitely for the person that's receiving it. And so there's a bit of a balance for that depending upon what you want to do for the game.
There's an interesting point that you kind of passed by in that of, I made a comment to Austin of, we found this particular color to be something that we just ended up focusing on and we got a lot of points and it feels like maybe it's too strong. And this other one, we just never touched it.
We never touched it.
And his response was, it's really interesting that that's what you think because other groups are saying other color combinations. I've heard inverse of what you have. So this is very much what's the meta of the group? So it goes back to, I want to play this with the same people because we're going to see that evolution.
I think that does go ahead and give a positive mark on the replayability, though, of it as well.
I agree.
So that's pretty cool.
this next bit is one that I always like to mention, and that is suggestions or recommendations of if you like these games, why you would like this, or if you like this, maybe you like other games. So I have 3 that are top of mind for me of there's an aspect of each game in them that I feel like would be good recommendations. The first one is probably going to feel a little weird, but it's Antidote.
Yeah.
Because that idea of when you're looking at the drafting, when you're looking at, okay, here are my X cards, it's that same idea of like, here are the reckonings. Do I want to pass these? Do I want to use these? How do I want to handle that? It's all that information control. And so if you like that type of game, especially with the card passing and everything, I think there's a big connection between those two. My next one is Dune Imperium, because a lot of that, do I want to be in the battle? If I'm going into the battle, do I want to use my intrigue cards, or in this case, my mercenary cards? Am I going to try and double bluff my opponents of, I don't care, but I really do care? That idea of how do I want to interact with the battles? It doesn't have the deck building, and it certainly doesn't have the worker placement of Dune Imperium, but that overarching Bene Gesserit idea of how much do I want to play with my opponents, and do I care about these battles? Do I care about these reckonings? I think there's a strong connection there. And then my last one, I really wanted to get it played before we sat down to do this. We just didn't have the time to, and that is Cyclades. There's an argument that you could put Inish in here as well because of the drafting and all the things, but I think Cyclades is the better comparison, because Cyclades is a dudes on a map game where you are trying to just establish 2 metropolises, but you do it through a bidding system of whoever wins the bid for a god gets to do whatever the god does. So if you have Zeus, that's going to start getting you discounts for future bids. If you go for Ares, I'm putting land troops on the board, and if I get Poseidon, then I get to do all the sea troops. And so it is that idea of how do I want to bid, where is it important for me to bid, which do I really need to go all in on? And so that idea of your bid fueling your onboard gameplay, I think really connects there, and especially if you do like that variability, because Cyclades has the gods that change in and out, all those things. But for me, those are 3 really tight top of mind connections that if you like those, I think you would like this. If you like this, you might like those. Normally at this point, we would just give final thoughts and scores. This is a preview. We're not going to do that. I think we are all positive on the game.
Oh, yeah.
We enjoyed our time with it. We were very happy we got to take the time with it.
I think coming into this with an open mind, knowing that you're going to have a lot of things that are given to you, probably things that you haven't had to mess with all at the same time, because, I mean, there is so much. I don't think I've ever seen a game that has so many things like this, even amongst IV games. So, yeah, realize that you're going to be in for quite a ride.
I think there's a lot of moving parts in here that work really well together, and that is something that sings for a lot of Ivy Studio games. There is one thing I would say, as you said, come in with an open mind. I do think that having a good game group that can make an agreement to have good communication with each other, and if they need clarification for something, might not be a bad idea, especially make sure that's clear in the beginning.
And definitely know that that first game can be really rough of, wait, huh? Because even though the game is so smooth and the teach is as quick as it is, like grasping how all the threads tie together and building a solid strategy, it is able to be done. You will have a good time, but you will perform better on future plays.
Oh, yeah.
You just will. So this is one that you're going to want to sit there and dive in and dig. And we said it earlier, same group, get that meta going. You're going to have a good time with this one.
Very much so.
So with all that stated, go on to Kickstarter and check it out right now.
Do it.
So we'll have that Kickstarter link in the episode notes. Go check it out. Ivy Studios are great friends to the Bat family here. We love their stuff. We were very happy to be able to take part in this one. We were really happy we got to have Jason in on this and have an extra voice for the game.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun to go ahead and get in on this one too. And I really like that there is such a healthy communication between Ivy and Bat, because just seeing them over at Gen Con or over at PAX, they were just so open and inviting to be able to talk and even play with us. Just going back to being able to play Veiled Fate with Austin and the guys was just such a cool moment.
And to play Tribunal early was just...
Oh my God, that was so amazing.
So thank you again, Ivy, for giving us the opportunity for this, because this is an awesome experience, and we hope to go ahead and be able to do more.
And if you want to check some of our photos, you can always check us out on Facebook, where some of the photos from the game, I have taken pictures of a lot of the materials, the board, got some of that nice up close of that artwork before. Of course, like we said, this is a prototype copy, but at least we'll give you a nice idea of what you're going to see.
Well, thank you so much, guys, and we will catch you on the next one.